In the quiet little town of Salida, Colorado, a mother of two vanished without a trace, leaving behind a community gripped by fear and uncertainty. Suzanne Morphew's disappearance in May of 2020 sparked a massive search effort, drawing nationwide attention as investigators worked tirelessly to uncover the truth behind her fate. But this case was certainly confusing. Her husband, Barry Morphew, who was the prime suspect in this case, went to court, but he never went to trial, and ultimately he was let go. He was arrested in May of 2021 and released in April 2022, just days before trial. The judge banned 11 out of 16 key witnesses from the prosecution and said they failed to turn over key evidence in Barry's favor, citing sanctions. Now, in September of 2023, Suzanne's body was discovered only 45 miles south of where she lived, in a remote, dry desert field area of sagebrush and natural grasses just south of Moffett, Colorado. She was discovered while investigators were there searching for someone else, and her remains were buried in a shallow grave before being scattered. 7 months later, the case takes a startling turn with the emergence of new evidence, shedding light on the mystery surrounding Suzanne's disappearance and her death. And this development has important questions popping up yet again about her husband, Barry Morphew, and his potential involvement, and also the question of what happens next. I'm Linda with It's a Crime, so now let's get into it. The results are in from Suzanne Morphew's autopsy after 7 long months, and it does not look good for a certain bear, as we call him, aka Barry Morphew, Suzanne's husband. Suzanne was found in September of 2023, and her results of the autopsy were announced on April 29th, 2024. As of the time of this recording, which is April 30th, 2024, it is Suzanne's birthday today. Happy birthday in heaven, Suzanne. The truth is coming out, and justice will hopefully be served up hot. Now, Suzanne would have been 53 years old today, and she went missing just after her 49th birthday and reported missing on Mother's Day in 2020. In September of 2023, she was found in a shallow grave in Saguache County, south of Salida, and just south of Moffett. In the autopsy report, it states, reported history of recovery of a partial skeleton, medical port, Suzanne was going through chemo at the time, and clothing was scattered in and around a shallow grave in Saguache County. They identified Suzanne through dental records, and the CBI, FBI, Saguache County Sheriff's Office, Chaffee County Sheriff's Office, and the district attorney and the coroner were present during the autopsy, and of course the forensic odontologist to perform the dental identification. And submitted for examination were 3 large paper bags which contained bones, 7 brown paper bags, and 7 envelopes containing items that we'll talk about in a minute. But first, they tested her right femoral head, which is the highest part of her thigh bone, for toxicology. And in the autopsy, her manner of death was deemed a homicide. And interestingly, 3 notable chemicals were found in her body, and it's known as the acronym BAM formulation: butorphanol, azaparone, and medetomidine intoxication. And these 3 drugs are consistent with veterinary medicine. Now, these cocktail of drugs is often used to sedate large game animals such as elk, deer, and black bears. And these are typically prescribed by a vet, but people can actually buy this for their own personal use to manage wildlife on farms, ranches, and in forests. And this is an important detail we'll talk about in a minute. In the 7 brown paper bags that I just mentioned, they contained a pale pattern balaclava, a pink and light color leather work glove, a light color partial padded bra, a ripped dark blue and gray hooded sweatshirt labeled Crested Butte, a torn green Nike tank top, Yeti shorts, which are bike shorts, and also a fabric fragment. And it said to note that the clothing and fabric fragments are said to have been all weathered and covered in dirt. In the 7 envelopes I also mentioned earlier, there were 5 fabric fragments. Suzanne's dirt-covered purple medical port, and also one weathered bullet, but there was no mention of anything further on said bullet. Now, one notable sentence in the report also says 1 paper bag containing 4 packets of botany/bug and 2 packets from hoodie. Also, according to this report, it states, based upon the information provided to me at the time of this report, it is my opinion that Suzanne Morphew, a 52-year-old white female, died as a result of homicide by unspecified means in the setting of the BAM cocktail, basically. These drugs are marketed as a compounded injectable chemical immobilizer for wildlife, aka trank dart, we'll talk about that in a minute, providing pharmacologically irreversible analgesia, sedation, and immobilization. If more information becomes available, this report may be amended. Now let's talk about the connection to the trank darts. After Suzanne's disappearance, law enforcement searched the Morphew residence and they found a dart gun, empty darts, and a needle used to inject tranquilizer chemicals into the darts. And not only that, but they also found a clear cap that covers that injecting needle, and they found it in the dryer of the Morphew house, which also had bed sheets and clothes in it. Now, Barry talked to the investigators about the dart gun and told them he used it to tranquilize deer so he can take their antlers. Oddly, he actually called it horns as well. But that's not all Barry said. In a February 28, 2021 interview, he sat down with Special Agent Grusing. Grusing talked to Barry about the fact that the last proof of life of Suzanne, and that day, May 9th, his phone went around the house quite a bit. He asked Barry, "Were you looking for her?" Barry said, "I shoot chipmunks. I've shot 85 chipmunks because they got into my furnace and cost me a bunch of money. So when I'm home, I just walk around and shoot them. Just keep going around the house." And Agent Grusing asked, "Well, what happened next?" And Barry said, "I don't recall." Now, I'll have a video about his odd lunch also that day, as he was also searching for a turkey, he said, among other things. I'll have that at the end of this video or down below. I have several videos on this case. And authorities believe that Barry came home the afternoon of May 9th, went into his garage, took the cap off of a syringe used to load a trank dart, injected the chemical into the dart, and shot Suzanne with it. They found a trank gun, but it wasn't working, and they couldn't find the chemicals at the home either. In his arrest affidavit, it said, Barry was asked if he had that chemical at the house, and he said, "I don't know if I had any left or not. I don't recall." Now, Barry was asked the name of the chemical, but he could not recall that either. He said he could make a phone call about it and added, "I don't recall having any left." Barry said that they are fired like a bullet, and when asked if they have an expiration date, he said they don't have one. Now, another interesting piece of information was there was a bullet that was found in the Morphew bedroom beside Suzanne's side of the bed. I can't wait to see if this bullet matches the one they found along with Suzanne's remains. What do you think? Barry says he uses a .22 to shoot chipmunks. Now, Barry had scratch marks on his arms after Suzanne went missing, and they were photographed for evidence. And the prosecution presented in court that at some point when Barry came home that day, he must have snapped and murdered Suzanne and used the trank dart to do it. And one of the witnesses said Barry told him they're going to find trank darts because he shoots deer for their horns. Antlers. According to an expert, it takes 4 to 20 minutes for a deer to drop. The prosecution also theorized that Barry's phone pinged, or binged as the defense attorney calls it in the Daybell case. It pinged all over the house as Barry was chasing Suzanne, not chipmunks, and shot her with the trank gun. And according to the expert, if Suzanne was struck, she'd have a little bit of time to run around, but wouldn't get very far because to a human, it would be lethal. So at 2 p.m., Suzanne takes a selfie, and that's the last proof of life. FBI agents state that Barry changed critical details about his activities that day in order to match the evidence. At 2:26 p.m., Barry texts Suzanne, "Done, headed back." 2:43 p.m., according to Barry's phone, an his F-350 telematics, Barry arrives at his home by 2:43. Now, 4 minutes later at 2:47 p.m., Barry puts his phone in airplane mode. Guess he doesn't want anyone to call him while he's out shooting chipmunks. And he admits to running around his property at that time. Now, when asked what he did that evening, Barry just simply said he had dinner with Suzanne, they had sex, and then went to bed. He said he went to sleep at around 8 p.m., but that was deemed a lie. According to the data from his truck, it was put in reverse and backed up towards his house at around 9:30 p.m. And from May 9th, that day, to May 10th, the early hours, approximately 210 locations for Barry's phone registered near the Morphew residence compared to 0 to 2 locations on previous nights from May 1st through to May 8th. But we're not done yet. There's, of course, more. And in the middle of the night, between 3:25 a.m. and 3:48 a.m., in the early hours of May 10th, Barry's Ford F-350's doors opened and closed multiple times and was noted over 80 events occurred during this time frame. And according to the authorities, they allege Barry took steps to dispose of evidence in Suzanne's disappearance and death, created a false alibi, and staged a crime scene. And the crime scene was of Suzanne's bike nearby that was thrown in a ditch, and was reported that she went missing after a bike ride, which is a load of you-know-what.
Suzanne? Maybe see if you can get that up to the road and then check the serial number or call the husband and see what kind of bike she has. Salida, Chippy Line. Can you try to call the husband and see what type of bike she has? Right now I'm staring at a Santa Cruz, blue in color.
Barry left that morning, that Sunday morning on the 10th, for a last-minute emergency job to Broomfield on Mother's Day, which was not normal. He wasn't supposed to be working that job in that area on Sunday or any Sunday, as you're not supposed to do work on Sundays. And he said when he left his home, Suzanne was still sleeping and he heard her snoring. And another account said he gave her a kiss and left. You know, as for the snore, from what? The trank gun, Bear? Now, things are starting to become clear, and I want to point something out. Barry claimed that Suzanne went missing from a bike ride. Suzanne's last proof of life was at 2 p.m. Saturday, May 9th, and she was wearing a bathing suit and a towel, as per a picture. And days after her disappearance, Barry knocks on the door of a local store in Poncha Springs, which is 10 minutes east of their home. He gives a note with a description of what he says is of Suzanne, but it's odd, since it didn't have any descriptors of Suzanne, except all it said was baby blue bike helmet, biker's clothing. No physical descriptors of Suzanne, no hair color, eye color, height, nothing. And he didn't even leave his contact information. But it gets worse. Authorities found her helmet the opposite way on the side of the road. And let's just circle back for a moment of the evidence found with Suzanne's remains. She was wearing a ripped Nike top, a hoodie, and bike shorts. Suzanne's last proof of life, she had a towel and a bathing suit. And the towel was never recovered, and to my understanding, neither was the bathing suit. So here's the problem. Did Suzanne get on her bike clothes? Or was she still in that bathing suit and towel that's missing? And I doubt if she was wearing bike clothes. And if not, and if we follow the timestamps, guess who would have put that on her? Barry, quite contrary. And he'd have to dress her in full biking gear, then get rid of the bike, allegedly, then get rid of the helmet, then go to Poncha Springs to create a narrative, and to go to Broomfield as well to create another alibi. And speaking of Broomfield, his workers were called last minute for that job, and when they arrived at his hotel room, both claimed it reeked of chlorine. And Barry was seen on camera changing his clothes numerous times that day and making 5 garbage dumpster runs to various dumpsters. And one more thing. His theory at first was a kidnapping. He even made a 25-second video pleading to the kidnappers without the guidance from authorities. 1 second for each year of their 25-year marriage.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you. We miss you. Your girls need you. No questions asked. However much they want, I will do whatever it takes to get you back. Honey, I love you. I want you back so bad.
I broke down this in a pattern and his behavior years ago when this first came out. It was posted, I think it was a week or a couple weeks after Suzanne went missing. It was May 24th, 2020, so 2 weeks after. Have a watch. Also, there's another video made by a YouTuber who interviewed Barry Morphew and kept his video in his pocket. And I think it's a very, very important piece to this entire case. And so I'll link that down below. But I also broke down Tyson's video and Barry's behavior, and I'll also have that in a link below or at the end of this video. Now, once that kidnapping theory didn't work for Barry, and even his brother-in-law didn't believe it, he then changed it to a mountain lion that must have taken Suzanne and carried her up the hill. Now, Barry's defense team was asked their opinion about the recent findings, and Barry's attorney is a complete shark. Her name is Iris Etan. Barry gave her kisses in the parking lot after court. I'll show that video right here. Iris stated that the dart gun was broken and locked in a gun cabinet when investigators found it. And Iris said that investigators should focus on people who have access to the drugs, like vets, wildlife officers, and ranchers, instead of Barry. Really, Iris? Shouldn't they ask her husband, who claimed he shoots things all the time with a tranq dart? Just so happened that the authorities found a cap in the dryer that weekend. Iris said, quote, "My hope is investigators are tracking down veterinary records." She also said that authorities haven't shared any details about the bullet or whether it was intact or not. And they haven't told the Morphew family if those clothes have been tested for DNA. Now, the DNA was an interesting piece in this case because investigators found male DNA on Suzanne's glove box of her car, but it was so interesting because they were partial DNA profiles, and the defense was pushing that it was related to an unsolved SA in different states. But when I researched this, it wasn't that it was directly to the predator, it was a relative of the predator. So that's a big difference. But Iris was pushing that one thing, and it never got sorted out in court, which drove me bananas. Iris also stated that the toxicology report showed caffeine in Suzanne's body and said it was consistent with Suzanne having her morning coffee before her bike ride, and in fact that a partially finished cup was found at the home after her disappearance. I did not see that in that toxicology report, so what does she have that we don't? As for the tranquilizer cap found in the home, the defense said that that's a nothing burger because no one can say how long it had been there. And there is no evidence, she says, that ties the cap to Barry. Suzanne and Barry weren't getting along leading up to her disappearance and death. And there were a lot of back and forth texts about this, and she was sick of his crap. It led her into the arms of another man, and he was known to be controlling, and there was issues with him for years and years for straying. And according to a close friend of Suzanne's, she did not feel safe alone with Barry. And this picture also says it all. It always has haunted me. Now, not to mention, I have a very interesting video about his disgusting Google searches and YouTube watches and websites he frequented. And it includes a 15 or 14-year-old minor. Check that video in the description box below. I believe that needs to be talked about more. So on April 19th, a few years ago, before Barry's trial was set to start, the DA submitted a motion to dismiss the charges against him without prejudice, meaning the prosecution can refile charges in the future. Barry has maintained his innocence all these years, even though his behavior after her disappearance was so sketchy. By the way, he didn't even go to her vigils or help search. He said that he conducted his own search and didn't want anyone searching the area. I call it the triangle area. Again, video below. Barry filed a $15 million lawsuit against prosecutors in early 2023, alleging a malicious prosecution. He was also suing the FBI, the CBI, the whole gamut. And I'd love to know if Suzanne's body was moved, if that was her only location where she was. Barry was so insistent on living near the home, and his ankle monitor, he had to wear wouldn't register while he was in that area. He had to go to Poncha Springs every day and check in. I find it interesting to the timing of the release of the autopsy. I love that it was a day before Suzanne's birthday that it was released and before the 4-year mark of her disappearance and Mother's Day. And Barry was arrested on May 5th previously. So why do I love it? Because I think history is about to repeat itself. What do you think? Let me know below. And do you think that the balaclava that was found was to support Barry's kidnapping theory? Let me know below. Here's what you can watch next and what YouTube thinks you'd like to watch next. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.